Welcome into the Gramlich and MacLane podcast, presented by Ingles, the official supermarket of Gramlich and MacLane. Mac, I am not sure, at least at any point throughout the season, maybe preseason, because we all thought Clemson would be good. But I'm not sure you could have ever told me you guys will be doing a national championship episode and an ACC team will be in that natty. Like, all the ups and downs, the roller coaster that was this season back, the amount of times the ACC personally hurt you, Eric MacLane. We are doing a natty episode. I really can't believe it.
It does feel very poetic. You know, a season that it feels like more than ever has just taken a knife, and I guess it hit the right side. It didn't hit the left side. I guess that's the key, you know, because the heart's
You
good. The heart's
lived.
pumping with a bunch of joy right now, and it's all because of these Miami Hurricanes. But really, bowl season in general for the ACC
True.
was tremendous. The postseason was so good. It seemed like we got to Code Blue happened, and we were at peak devastation, and it just looked like there was no hope. All was lost. And then here, just off in the light, there was a green and orange light just flickering. And who knew that that would be our saving grace right here, the Miami Hurricanes. So it's been amazing. It's been so much fun. And you're right. You know, to flash back, sitting in Charlotte or doing any of these previews that you and I did, to
Mhm.
think that we would be here covering the national championship. Literally in 5 days, I will be landing in Miami for 4 days of coverage. It's hard to imagine, but it's pretty amazing, I'll have to say.
You know, I would say, Mac, and I know this is a favorite thing that college football coaches love to talk about, battling through adversity. I would say you and I battled through a lot of adversity this season. We pushed through. We tried to hype up any team that would give us a chance, right? I mean, Georgia Tech, we were with you for a while. Clemson preseason, Lord. Florida State,
We were
after you beat
there.
Alabama. But the one team, you're right, that consistently delivered. They had a few hiccups, don't get me wrong, but the one team that delivered was Miami, Mac. And I know you're going to be in Miami for all this coverage. I'm super excited for you. I will be watching the national championship from my favorite location, which you know is my couch. So I will be going to Ingles to get ready because we've got a lot coming up, Mac. From a football watching perspective, the next like 3 weeks between the Natty and then the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
you got to get locked in. You gotta understand what dips you're serving. You need to understand what appetizers, what finger foods you're getting. Like, there's so many different things that you need to get ready to do because I see these tickets. These tickets are like $3,500
Crazy.
bare minimum.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people will be watching from the couch, and they're gonna need Ingles to get ready for that.
That's right. It is the most expensive average ticket price for a national championship on record. So yes, just like
That's
KG,
crazy.
a lot of people will be staying at home, and you can homegate. Ingles is the best place to go homegate. You can have your own smoker. You don't have to have the travel size one. You can have the big one. Best meats in town. Whatever you want to do, let's get creative. And I think honestly, we should do a little initiative here. I want to see
Yeah.
what your homegate looks like. So if you guys are listening to this, show us what you're cooking. Whether you're at the game, you're at Hard Rock, or if you're at home like us, go to Ingles, load it up, and let's get to it. So that's what we want to see. So if you could do that, that would be tremendous. KG, speaking of how expensive this was, before we get to a message from our
Oh.
friends at Ingles, I saw a tweet yesterday that was a package that gave you a midfield suite, so a very nice location, sick suite. I believe it had 18 tickets, food and bev provided. I wish they had Ingles; it would be better food. And then, how many? Two things. I'm gonna ask you the price, and I'm gonna ask you parking. How many parking spots do you think said midfield suite with 18 people would get you a package of that nature?
Did they say like two?
Two. It gets you two. You have 18 people. You have two
Better
cars you can
carpool, better
bring.
get the Sprinter van.
And now let's put it all together. The price
Oh
of
my God.
said suite. What do you think it was? You can do some math. You can pull out the calculator, whatever you want to do.
$100,000.
Not even close. Try again. Not
$500,000.
even close. Try again.
Stop it. Stop it, Mac. This is insane.
$1.1
No,
million.
no, no, no. It's a football game, people.
And you get
I
two
mean, it's
two two parking passes for 1.1 million.
what? Well, there will be some big time ballers at this game. I
Oh
mean, Mark
yeah.
Cuban, one
Yeah.
of what, the richest Americans out there is gonna be there. He's
Right.
an Indiana
Yeah.
alum. I'm sure he's gonna be there. So, yeah, I guess, the price is going up every
Prices
day.
going up. I just am happy that I get to be there. That's
You
all.
get to be there.
So anyway, all right, that's crazy. Unbelievable, to say the
Wow.
least. Let's get to a message from our friends over at Ingles, and then let's break this game down. Come on.
Did you know Ingles only sells USDA choice and prime cuts of meat? Maybe it's time to reward yourself. Our butchers cut all our meat fresh in the store every day. Grass-fed, organic, you name it. Not only that, we'll even cut it to order just the way you like it. And we grind meat fresh in the store multiple times a day. It's all in the bag. That's the best meat in town for the best folks in town. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Okay, Mac, let's get into this national championship game. Monday, January 19th, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN, Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens, Florida. Number 10 Miami versus number 1 Indiana. Indiana is a 7.5-point favorite.
Mm,
The total is at 48.5. And Miami is going for its sixth national championship, its first since 2001, while Indiana aims for its first national title in program history. The most recent first time FBS champion was Florida back in 1996. So I think that's really cool. I think, of all the storylines that we could have had in this playoff, Miami, Indiana is fascinating for so many
right.
different reasons. Is Miami truly back? Indiana comes out of nowhere. Kurt Signetti is never happy. They have no 5 stars, and all of a sudden they're Indiana and they're in the national title game. It's crazy. But, Mac, I also think let's talk big picture here and give me kind of your big picture thoughts on the matchup. It feels like we've switched back to kind of when Miami was playing Ohio State, and everyone's just kind of thinking, oh, Miami has no chance. Like, it
Mhm.
feels like we're back to that. The
Right.
Miami has no chance narrative, which is crazy to me.
It is crazy, and it's fascinating. There was a lot of stuff there, to kinda look at and break down, but I think the, interesting thing of, like Nicole Auerbach tweeting, "Carson Beck gonna have nightmares, for the next week," and I'm just like, "Huh? Why?" For what, kinda reason, and, hey, it is what it is, and we'll see what kinda happens here. Obviously, 2 very good teams, very well-coached teams, very productive teams, a team in Indiana that makes 0 mistakes, that is just so, disciplined and so well coached, and a team in Miami that has rallied and is bigger, badder, and nastier than anybody that they've played, and that's important too. That's a really big factor, especially in the game like football, and so we're going to kind of see here what wins. The bullies or the well calculated, studious guys in Bloomington. What we'll see there, and it's going to be a great matchup. I really can't wait. And you mentioned these 2 head coaches, literally 2 guys that are never happy. I am
Never.
fully convinced that if Miami wins this, Mario Cristobal is going to be pissed off because he's lost all this time recruiting and he can't get to all these guys on the next level. And I will say, I was proud of Coach Signetti. He showed a little human element in that post game interview where he said, "I'm just thinking about getting a beer." I was like, "Whoa, okay, cool, man.
He's
I
a
like that.
human.
I like that." Yeah, because I hadn't seen that. I mean, literally, Indiana scores a touchdown, he looks pissed off. He's
Yeah.
like, "Gosh darn it, what took so long to score?" He's pissed, about them scoring a touchdown. So it is 2 guys, that are perfectionists and that are always thinking, of what's next and how to build this and how to, keep it going. And, I think it makes a little bit more sense at a place like Miami, and especially for Mario Cristobal. Like, there's so much pressure internally,
Mhm.
externally about being back, and he's honestly, I'm glad I can tell you this live in person. When we speak to him again, do not ask that. Like, he hates it. So just, for your sake, for my sake, don't ask him if they're back, because he is so tired of that. And I understand,
Sure.
it's a lot. And again, the internal pressure is probably even that much more because of the responsibility that he feels as a former player, as a former national champion, and getting this thing back, to the level that it was when he was there and the level that, everyone expects Miami to operate at. So I think that that's the fascinating part. And on the other side with, Coach Signetti, it's just who he is. I mean, it's just a guy that was raised, at a bunch of different places that took the most alternative route you could to get to this point. And even the school that he's at, no one's thinking that. No one's
Right.
thinking. I mean, I remember the tweets when he took the Indiana job, KG, people saying, "Is Indiana a better job than JMU?" Like, legitimately, people arguing that.
Sure.
And I think there was some validity to it, at the time, but how he has gotten them to this point, and you look at the recruiting, thought processes from each. I think Miami is like the perfect blend of supplementing the freaky freshmen that can play right away, high school, and transfer portal folks. Like obviously there's some really key positions, quarterback being one of them. And then the other side, an Indiana team that just give me all the oldest people in college football. Like if they're graduated and working on a second master's, we want them. Like that's the guy that, we want leading our team and making plays and making tackles. So it is interesting. If Indiana wins this, do we start to see a bunch of copycats? Do we start to see a bunch of
Right.
teams try to adopt, give me the oldest guy we can? We're not wasting time on this, five-star freshman that's transferring after his freshman. Who cares? Like this guy's unproven, probably doesn't have it. Go give me the savvy vet from Tennessee State that had been there, done that, and is ready to go.
I think I was watching Cover 3 podcast. They do a good job. And Tom Fornelli said it's a battle of middle-aged men on the lines of scrimmage, which is kind of what this is, especially when you look at Indiana. And Mac, it's funny, there's so many different storylines and connections with this game. The fact that Fernando Mendoza went to the same high school as Mario Cristobal, and he's from Miami, of course. And then Fernando Mendoza's dad, Fernando Sr., was a teammate of
Yeah.
Mario Cristobal's
Yeah.
at Christopher Columbus High School, which is 5 miles from the U, 20 miles from Hard Rock Stadium. These are storylines you can't make up. And then, of course, Fernando Mendoza at Cal last year, which we were very familiar with him last year. You had that crazy Miami Cal game last season that was ridiculous. Miami rallied from 25 points down. Fernando Mendoza, in that game, he was 11 of 22 for 285, 2 touchdowns and a pick. We covered Cal last year. We
Yeah.
remember Fernando Mendoza.
Sure.
What Kurt, and I want to give Mendoza all the credit because he obviously seems like he's worked his butt off. He's super cerebral. He's made this happen for himself, obviously, but Signetti also put him in this position
Sure.
to turn him in this team into a monster. I mean, Mac, they have 8 4- or 5-star players.
Yeah.
And they had basically zero trouble with Oregon, who has 55 4 or 5 stars. Bama had 57, and Miami has 45. I just feel like we've never I think this game is so interesting for so many different reasons. The storylines in this game, and I know we won't ask Coach about it, but I think as people talking about it, the idea of is Miami back? Like this, you win this game, and it felt like, Mac, as people who've covered this league and you've played in this league, and I remember you were on a team that went down to Miami and beat them like 56-3 or something. It felt like something like that. It felt like Miami would truly never be back.
Right.
And I would argue, even if they lose this game, it feels like they are. But for Miami standards, and I see different people telling me this on Twitter, they have to win a national title to feel like they're actually back.
Yeah, 58-0 was the score.
So sorry. My apologies.
We're wondering. You were a point off and 3 points the wrong way, but it's okay. Sorry, Canes fans, if you forgot that.
They're like, really? On this podcast? Really?
Right, never. I think an interesting part of what you're saying, specifically looking at Miami being back, I just think of it differently, I guess, when I hear that, because hearing that and saying that, what I mean by that is you're back to being nationally relevant on a consistent basis. You will never be back to what you were in those days. Nobody can. It's literally impossible to do that when you look at the talent. I think they had like 20 guys drafted in the first round of a 2-team span. I mean, or maybe a one team. Maybe one team.
You don't have the money to pay enough of those guys. Yeah.
And it's just different. Recruiting's different. Everyone knows to go to South Florida to get talent. They were keeping all those guys home. It's so different now. It's literally impossible to do what they were able to do. So I think that's where the frustration comes, because that's what maybe some people, or that's how it's perceived when you ask that. What I mean when I say that is you're back to being a bully. You're back to being the real deal. You're back to us having expectation and you meeting expectation. Unlike, the previous 6 years that we've done this, I would say more than half of the time we have been very high on Miami and Miami falls flat on their face. And so that's where the Hurricanes are. And when you and I say they're back, that's what we mean by that. And I do think win or lose, they are back to that. They are back to they're going to be good year after year, and they've built this thing to be very consistent. You look at these 2 freshmen; they have 2 freshman linemen coming in. One of them in Cantwell, who is literally the number 1 player in the country, 6'7", 6'8", 330 pounds, as a true freshman, can bench 500 pounds like it's nothing. I mean, it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So you're talking about, okay, that's a future top 5 pick. And then on the other side, you got another guy who's 6'6", 6'7", and just looks like a freak. So that is happening. and they're going to invest that money to get those guys, but they're also going to get out and supplement in the portal. And so all of that is fine. All of that is going to continue to happen. That's why I think, and all the things you said about Indiana is so true, how unconventional, how it's looking. But when you look on the field and we look at this game and start to dive into, some of these matchups, KG, I think we start on the great on great, and that's the
Mm.
Indiana offense that has been so efficient, so good, no mistakes seemingly, and this Miami defense that has been unbelievably dynamic, unbelievably dominant, and quite frankly scary for opposing teams. And I think they have to play like that. The Miami defensive line, it's the brightest stage by far, and they're going to need you the most. I mean, they're going to need you to affect this game. Fernando Mendoza is very electric with his legs. I don't think I'm necessarily going out on the limb and saying that he's a dual threat quarterback. I certainly think he's a pro style quarterback, but he is mobile and he's ran it 83 times. I mean, that's a bunch for 200 and something yards, 6 touchdowns. That is a lot. He is very mobile in the fact of extending plays, and he can hit it when he needs to, and he has some wheels there. So, I think that you have to get him on the ground. When you hit him, you have to hit him hard. And really what can help you is whether it's man-to-man or tight zone, throwing off timing of the routes. A majority of his sacks, which he's been hit 22 times this year, have come when he is going and has to double pump because of coverage, where the cornerback is either pressing or there's something not there, maybe a linebacker dropped where he wasn't expecting, and he has to double clutch and then go somewhere else because those plays are expected to happen fast. And even the way that you block up front, you're not blocking for 3 to 4 seconds. You're blocking for 1.5, 2 seconds. And that ball should be out. And so if Miami is able to create those, and when you do get home, you have to get the ball out or you have to affect the ball. He's not going to give it to you like maybe Chambliss did last week where you were not able to capitalize. You are truly going to have to affect him and or take it away. And that's the most interested matchup of all of this that I'm interested to see, which is a little unconventional. Fernando Mendoza versus the Miami defensive line.
Completely agree, Mac, and that's where I was gonna start. And, you have Mendoza has been the talk of this college football season. He won the Heisman Trophy. And then you have, arguably the best D-line in the country and arguably maybe the best overall prospect player in the country in Ruben Bain, who's
Mhm.
eligible for the draft. And the different guys that they bring on the D-line and just this defense as a whole. When you look at Fernando Mendoza's numbers, when he has a clean pocket, when he is not pressured, this is a bit of an exaggeration, but honestly, it's not. He's perfect.
Yeah.
Like, if he is not disrupted, he's not going to mess up.
Mhm.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So you have to disrupt him. That's my biggest key for Miami. I think it is probably for you too, Mac. You've got to find a way to get him on the ground early, get your hands on him, make him uncomfortable. I think Ohio State did a decent job of that in the Big Ten championship. No, and then they were, Indiana only scored what, 13 points? But no one in the playoff has been able to do that. So do you think, Mac, that Miami can bother him enough to affect him?
Well, I think that's how they win the game.
Yeah.
I think that's they have to if you want to win, and I think that it's going to be a tall challenge for a couple of reasons. This is the best offensive line you've gone against all season. I thought they should have been the Joe Moore Award winner, because of how good they've played. I mean, they won a Rose Bowl MVP. I mean, the offensive line was
That's
named the
yeah.
MVP.
And you vote on
And
that, right, Mac? You vote on
what's
the
that?
Joe Moore?
Yeah, I do, and they were my number 1 line. They were my
Gotcha.
number line. Unfortunately, Iowa won it. I don't know how. I mean, I think they're good, but geez, let's be real. I get it. There's a little bias there, but it is what it is. Pat Coogan, it starts with him. The center transfer from Notre Dame, freaky guy, really really good player. A guy that directs traffic, knows what's coming, can get his guys in the right spot. They are, I think, believe they're dealing with some injury at the right tackle position. I've seen a couple of different guys there in some rotating pieces. Ironically enough, if you go back and watch, some tape when they played Wisconsin, which they gave up 5 sacks that game, guys were all over the place. I mean, they had a bunch of guys either hurt, injured, whatever, and they had to have kind of a revolving door at that offensive line, different groups throughout the game. They were just trying to find anything that really worked, but they're at a great point right now. They're playing at a very high level, and they're good. They're savvy vets that you're going to have to just physically whip them. You're not going to trick them. You're not going to align like maybe you did with Ole Miss and others, where you have double A gap mug with two linebackers over the center, and they're going to guess like they're good. They're going to be fine there. So I think you have to. And then of course there's the question mark with Ahmad Moten, number 99, who has a lower body injury, and we saw him go out and come back in and go out against Ole Miss. I think that was a really big piece of how and why Ole Miss was able to play as well as they did. And of course, Key Mesidor went down towards the end of the game. Now he came back in, but that had to be a pretty rough injury. Now those guys got an extra day, and really will get 2 days because of the lack of travel, because they're already there playing a home game in Miami. Hopefully that helps them and those guys are ready to go, but that'll be a really big piece. And then just how do you pressure? What kind of blitzes do you send? Keontae Scott has been so good at bringing pressure and getting to the quarterback, hitting the quarterback. You have to pull out all the stops, for this game.
And be a little creative, try to throw Fernando Mendoza off with different blitzes and different looks. Try being the key word there. And Mac, they do get a little more time to heal up, as you said. We're going to have our guy, D-Money, on this week. We couldn't have anyone else. Danny Enriquez from Canes Insight. Hopefully he will have some more insight and injury, updates there.
Yeah.
So we'll keep you guys posted on that. When you flip it the other way, Mac, and you look at this Miami offense, the big question against Indiana is, can Miami do what they want to do?
Yep.
Can they run the ball? Can they protect Carson Beck? Indiana has 45 sacks on the year. They have 18 picks. This defense has been very good. And when you look at Miami, I mean, they ran the ball super well against Ole Miss. They have 3 straight games with 150 rushing yards, all those in the CFP, which is really impressive. Miami also forced 17 missed tackles against Ole Miss. You're going to have to be that dynamic against this Indiana team. Mark Fletcher's going to have to be on point. Malachi Tony's going to have to be making plays, and you're going to have these other guys stepping up like we've seen, which was a big key for me early in the playoff. Who can step up outside of Malachi Tony and Mark Fletcher? You've seen Keelan Marion. You've seen some of these tight ends. Other guys step up. You've seen Brown step up at the running back spot. So you need to continue that. But I would say, Mac, I feel probably better about the Miami offense and their ability to be effective. I think the matchup that maybe worries me the most is this defense against Mendoza. How do you feel about that?
Well, I certainly understand. He's the Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, he's by far the
He
best.
just doesn't make mistakes.
Yeah, and he doesn't make mistakes. I mean, it's the best unit they've gone against, in this playoff and all season long, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's a national championship. I mean, truly, it feels like we have 2 of the best teams right now that are playing, in this playoff get there, and that's part of it. It's part of the journey. It's part of the process, and yeah, it's going to be a big challenge, for the defense and flipping it, to the offense. As you said, I feel like they're at their best form right now. I mean, they're playing as good as they have all year, and everybody is playing as good. I mean, there was a time where they were humming, but it was the Malachi Tony show. And if he didn't do well, look out. This guy has to throw it, run it, pass it, catch it, all these different things, return it. And if he's not doing it, are we that good of a team? I mean, we saw that thought process in the first half against A&M, where it was just like, hey, let's be tricky and try all these things. And then they kind of figured out, and Coach Dawson kind of figured out, we're pretty good. Like we can just be who we are. We can run our offense. We can run the football. We can get the ball, to a plethora of different guys. And so that's why I give him, Coach Dawson, so much credit, because again, we just always have this thing in our heads that players get hot, players get better, players get work, all these different things. Coaches do too. And he is on a heater right now with how he is calling these plays, how he is seeing it, the responsibilities that he is giving and spreading them out. It's not just a one-man show. And so that's been the most impressive thing to me. And truly, I think they can take advantage of that running the football. I mean, listen, this defensive line that they're going against is the smallest that they've seen in this playoff, but they're the most active. They move, they switch, they do games, they twist, they bring unconventional pressure simulations. They do all these things to where, to me, KG, as an offensive line and in your film study, it's just, when I get my man, that's my man, and here we go. Like, I can't be thinking this and that. We have to establish the line of scrimmage and get that thing going backwards. And if you can, you've got a really good shot, not only to possess the ball and to make it uncomfortable like we saw last week, holding it for 42 minutes. That is crazy. But also executing at a high level, getting into the end zone. Once we get down into the close red, we can't run a wildcat jet sweep. We can't run a flea flicker. We can't do a double reverse. Run the ball. Do what got you there. Do what's gotten you through this entire playoff. And you shorten the game. That's the key to success for Miami. Possess the ball and stop the run. And if you can do so, you'll be national champions on your home turf there. So I think it's like you said, Mark Fletcher has to continue to be dynamic as he has, and other guys stepping up around the kind of three-headed monster there, the trio. And Marion has been exceptional. CJ Daniels, nice to see him,
Yeah.
kind of reemerge in this college football playoff. I think Elijah Lofton might be out. I mean, he was in a
Oh,
pretty bad spot in that game, but other tight ends have stepped up. So, who's it going to be? Who's going to continue to do that? And Marty Brown in the backfield as well. But I feel pretty confident in the in the attack and what we have seen from this talented offense. It's just going to be, can you limit the mistakes? And an interesting tidbit that I saw, I'm going to try to pull it up here so I read it correctly, but Indiana has been so effective picking the ball off. I mean, I
yeah.
saw something where they were like 4 or 5 picks on the first drive, and maybe 4 of those had been the first play of the game. I mean, that's
That's
crazy.
Well, you look at what happened against Oregon, and that's what Indiana's done. They've
Yeah.
started so quickly.
Hmm.
And what's a crazy stat that I saw, Mac, for this playoff, teams who score first are 9-1 in the college football playoff.
Crazy. It's crazy.
And, obviously, Indiana, I'm assuming they've scored first in every single one of their wins.
Yeah.
So, yes, starting quickly is gonna be so important for
I
this
would
game, I think,
imagine
in both ways.
Oklahoma's the only team that lost because they were up, what,
Yeah,
17-0? So that was the team. Oklahoma's the only team that lost
absolutely.
that. So if Coach Dawson, if you're watching this, run the football the first play of the game. Do not throw it.
Yes.
Do not throw it.
Good idea. I mean, and that's what it came down to with Indiana, Oregon. It's like Oregon just made so many mistakes early, that game was over.
Ton
And
of it.
okay, a big picture comment on this, Mac, because I remember back in the day, we're talking about teams going undefeated to win the national title, right?
Mhm.
I remember the 2018 Clemson team went undefeated, and people said, well, they were able to, they played in the ACC, they blew everyone out, and then they could kind of rest going into the playoff, right? Indiana has outscored opponents by 473 points this season, which ties Clemson entering the national title game that year. So, do we have anything to say about the Big Ten? Like, Indiana just rolled through the Big Ten. They rolled through Oregon. I mean, Oregon does this every year, right? They
Yeah.
get to the semis or the quarters and they collapse.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fascinating to think about that. And we've talked so much about how the ACC, we feel like, has prepared Miami, but no one has challenged Indiana in quite a few games here, Mac. It's back to the Big Ten championship when they played Ohio State.
Right. And I think it is interesting just because you don't want to point and look at anybody's schedule, but there is interesting pieces of it. I mean, you have an Alabama team who we thought shouldn't belong in the
Right.
playoff. You get that dub and hammer them. I mean, really embarrass them. You have an Oregon team that's very talented, but just made way too many mistakes. And
Well,
and
who
you'd
was
already
Oregon's
played them.
best win
Yeah,
throughout the
already
whole
beat them.
season?
Already beat them.
Yeah.
So I think there is something to that, especially with, Miami, and you look at the gauntlet that they've been through. I mean, you go on the road at 110,000 people, one of the hardest
Mhm.
stadiums to play. You play Ohio State, who everyone thought was going to win, the national championship, and then a pesky little Ole Miss team that only lost to Georgia and then avenged that loss, in the playoffs. So it is fascinating, just to look at how much does that matter.
Just something to think about.
And you have the direct head to head where we just saw Indiana play Ohio State. We just saw Miami beat Ohio
True.
State in a more dominant fashion. And so, does any of that matter? Who knows?
We'll
But I
see.
do think it's funny, the biggest narrative of how Miami does not belong. They shouldn't show up. That Indiana's going to run them out of the gym, and I just think that's foolish. I
That's
think
not
it's
happening.
foolish. Yeah,
Can I wanna hear, like, your if this happens, Miami can win. Like, give me what are the most important things for you in
yeah,
this game? Because I think Canes fans probably know we're both picking Miami. I'm absolutely taking Miami to cover
yeah.
the 7.5, especially in their home stadium. But give me, like, these are max keys. If this happens, Miami will win the national championship.
I think the number one by far and away, it's like number one and then a gap, and then number two is you have to affect Fernando Mendoza. I mean, you cannot let him just sit back there and play quarterback. You have to force him to create. You have to contain him. It's not necessarily the same principles as a week ago, but it's similar. It's a lot different than Julian saying for sure. So you have to get him off this spot. You have to hit him. You have to let him feel you and get to him. I mean, sack him, get him down, get the ball out. We saw that last week. he was running and fumbled it, and Oregon was not able to, capitalize. And who knows if that would have changed the game or not. So you have to capitalize when you can hit them. You have to affect them. And then the second thing is running the football. It's been the secret to success for Miami, and why I think they've been such a differentiator this entire playoff is the line of scrimmage. And that's going to hold true in this game. So if your boys up front can move the pile, if your running backs can be as electric as they have been, which I was a little critical, I will say, of the offensive line, maybe a little
Yeah.
too critical. So I need to back up and slow down just a smidge, because they did play well. I thought there was a lot of leakage. There wasn't as much as I thought. I thought they played really, really well. So that's going to have to continue, and they're going to have to play at a high level. But if those are the two things, again, number one, very, very important. Number two, it's kind of what they do. It's kind of a no duh, kind of answer there. They do both of those, they're winning this game. I mean, it is what it is. Now, if you do both of those and you drop 4 picks and you have 100 yards of penalties, you're going to get embarrassed. I mean, that's kind of the key there. So you have to play, the style of football similar in regards to sharpness that you played against Ohio State, and the dominance of Ohio State and A&M and Ole Miss from a running perspective.
I'm glad you bring up the penalties because that was an issue against Ole Miss, and that can't happen against Indiana. They will take advantage of that. I totally agree, Mac. The one thing I will add, I know people love to put out the stat that Indiana has no 4 and 5 stars basically, and Bama and Oregon and Miami, they have 40 plus. I felt like in the Bama game, the Oregon game, you didn't really hear from those 4 and 5 stars from Bama and Oregon. You need some of your 5 stars to make 5-star plays. Like, you need your game changers to be game changers if you're Miami. You need Malachi Toney to do what he did against Ole Miss, take a little screen pass and go 45 yards because he's a 5-star and he can do that because he's baby Jesus. So I feel like you need a couple of those plays if you're Miami. That's an advantage you have. You
Right.
have just more freaks on this team, like, for lack of a better term, and you need to see some of those plays. So that's what I would add there, Mac. And then, yeah, I mean, you've got to affect Fernando Mendoza. You cannot let him just sit there and be cerebral and just pick apart
Right.
this team in his home city. So this is probably, I'm more excited for this national championship than I have been for quite a few in the past. Now, that's because an ACC team is involved. I get that, Mac. We're a little biased, but I just can't wait. I think this is going to be a great game.
I can't either. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm taking the Canes to win. I think they
Me
get it. I
too.
think they get it done. I'm
Might as
going to
well. We've
extend
been doing it all
my
summer.
hotel stay. We're going to stick around for the national championship parade right there in the city, and I think that could be the start of a really incredible run for Miami. I think that could be kind of the boost, because you think of all the people that have invested money. It's that instant return on investment. You think of the quarterback success that they have had now 2 in
Yep.
a row at a very, very high level. You think of the homegrown talent that literally Jeremiah Smith, the best player in college football, said, I would have stayed home if they were winning like this. That's happening. That's going to happen. And Miami's going to keep their own. And I think that's going to help translate this thing to a new era of college football that maybe is ran by Miami. We'll see.
Ooh, good to know, Mac. We'll see. I mean, it also speaks to, with the ACC, with all the issues the ACC's had over the last couple of years that we've covered, and, different things. Now, of course, Miami's keeping all their money, so that's always interesting. But you can be in the ACC and do this. So do they run the ACC? Do they actually win the ACC in the next couple of years? Because they've yet to do that. Or do we see Miami, they say a rising tide can raise all ships. Like, do we see Miami continue to make the rest of the league rise up? That'll be interesting too.
We'll see. It's going to be a ton of fun. We will be back on Wednesday, maybe before. Who knows? We'll see when we post it with D-Money. Cannot wait to get his thoughts, some insight that he wants to provide there on the Canes, and if there's anything we need to know that we didn't already touch, and we'll get his thoughts on who wins this thing. I think I have a pretty good idea. We will find out. But we appreciate you guys. Subscribe to the channel. Jump in the comments. Tell us what you think about this matchup and where you might lean. But we'll be back for more on Wednesday. Until then, we'll see y'all.
Rollback just dropped their licensed game day collection. Polos, hoodies, Q-zips, custom designed for your school. On game days, we wear Rollback, period.